I think we got everything. I don't know. Let's give it a roll.
This is insane.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
Good morning.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale.
Thank you, folks. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I have forgot to do the I Dream a Genie blink. Anyway.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Okay, so here's the deal. It's 4:06 a.m. Sometime within the next hour, it's going to rain. And you know what rain means? Rain means that here's what it looked like upstairs. Not there. I always do that. Daily photo. How clean and perfect the last time that I prepared this, but apparently underneath, to the left of the two wide rectangular litter boxes, to the left of that, there's water was pooling. So as you can see, there's the two rectangular litter boxes, and now you see a bunch of tar. Literally, when in doubt, trying to fix a roof, go back to tar. The only problem is, I didn't think it was supposed to rain at 5 a.m. It was supposed to be like tonight or the next day. And I figured that stuff would have a chance to dry, congeal at least, or whatever. So the problem here is, and the title, this explains the title card, which is this. Maybe tar, who knows? But the real title of today's show is People Are Friggin' Nuts. It's mass insanity all over. And I put a chat in there. Every day it's the same crap on YouTube, TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, blogs, everywhere. It's everywhere. It's insanity. Yesterday there was supposedly a ceasefire, right? Over in, good old Ukraine. The question is, I don't think there is. The media is hyping this thing so much that I don't think people want to, they really don't want to end this thing. And now it's a matter of they've got these Ukrainians pumped up to Ukrainian patriotism. It's like, look, man, take the win, take the peace, and deal with it. The eastern part's going to be lost, but this show's not going to be about that. I don't know what it's going to be about. This is a close-up of that area I started out with. And as you can see, I slapped that tar on there real thick. There's no way it's going to dry. I did that yesterday noonish. There's no way that's going to dry in, 12, 16 hours. I don't even think it would even be hard. I think if you touched it with your hand, it would still be wet to the touch at the top. I don't think even it would have hardened, shelled. Now I was going to go up if it wasn't going to rain for till after the show, and I was going to put some plastic down on top of it, and then some rags and whatnot on top of that, cloth to collect water or whatnot. But I think what's going to happen is this is just going to water, wherever this mystery water is coming from, it's just going to work its way through, and it's going to moisten, wet that tar, and I'm going to have coffee stained water dripping down into my bedroom hallway and front bedroom. And that's going to occur the time that is ticking. So if I were to do my normal length show, who knows what kind of madness I would be greeting me. And then I have to wonder if this water is basically filled with tar, partially tar, is it going to clog up my pump And how would I clean up the pump? And I don't have a backup, and it's supposed to rain all day today and all day tomorrow. You understand how crazy life has gotten for me. I did tell you about how a light just from my kitchen just fixture fell and shattered, and it got glass all over the entire sink, counters, kitchen floor, all the way into this room, which is adjacent to the kitchen. I had to vacuum, mop, dustpan, and brush, clean off tops. Insane. I blame that on the vibrations of the trucks, which I often talk about, how they're never going to fix the infrastructure because it's been 3 years and they keep digging up the same holes and they never fill them properly. This year, they're supposed to go over this street and the highway department or something supposed to put. And when they do that, they use this grader thing. And I remember they did that years ago when I first moved in here. They put a new street down. And I had to end up screwing my pictures, paintings, framed things were falling off the wall. That's how strong the vibration was. So you can imagine what that's doing to pipes. As I said yesterday, I already had a plumber down in the basement because a pipe shook so much that it broke the seal. It's old, it's an old house and old pipes. But those seals, if you don't mess with them, they last, right? They only start, it's like a valve. You could have a valve. I don't know if you know this. I'm not a plumber, but I know enough about this. Underneath a toilet or even underneath the sink, there's a shutoff valve. Well, if you never use that thing, right? I mean, it's there. They're there for emergency use. I'll slurp there. But if you do by chance have to use it, shut off the water, and then you turn it back on or whatever, you'll notice it'll start leaking because the seal inside there, hasn't been used in 15 years or something, and and it's decayed or rotted or whatever. And so the point is, if you don't mess with the thing, it lasts a lot longer. You just leave it in place. But this shaking is just destroying this house on top of me trying to deal with all these health issues. And it's like, come on, it's crazy. It's insane. And somehow...
Your papers, please.
They put this on the back burner while they, while the war-profiteers rake in the money? I don't know. So, yeah, maybe tar, who knows? Man. It was a great idea. Look at it. It looks neat. It was a great idea. Could have worked, but not wet. It's just kind of like... See, I don't know where the water's coming from. I think it's coming from where the word who knows is. I think there's you see, that's floor level and where the two bases are. And there's this, spray foam, great stuff type of stuff that I put in a corner there. But I had sealed it up with that liquid rubber so to make it kind of a block, a sealed block. But I thought maybe, and I think I might have even caulked around the bottom of it, so that stuff couldn't be coming underneath it. But that still wasn't enough. And I thought, well, I'm just going to coat the sucker with tar. It's like licorice icing on a cake almost, it looks like, right? Think about it. But if the stuff would have at least got a chance to dry 24, 36 hours, semi-dry. I mean, tar, I think it could have held. I would have put plastic on it right away, but then it wouldn't have had the air, it wouldn't have been able to dry because it would have been sealing it back up in the can, right? Covering it with plastic. So I wanted to wait a couple days, cover it with plastic once it had the VOCs came out, which helped it, the drying things that dry these things out. Cover it with plastic and then put a couple towel type of things over top of it and then some containers to catch any water. Right now, I don't even have any containers catching any water in front of it. So if it rains, I guess I'm going to have to end the show early. So I guess we'll just talk about people being friggin' nuts until I start hearing the noise of the rain, you know? It's kind of sad. I don't know what to say. Oh, no. Yeah, oh, no. It's like, and then what am I going to do? I'm up. It's 4:16 a.m. So I end this show sometime within the next half hour, 45 minutes tops. And it's like 5 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. I'm broke. I don't get paid, so to speak, until Wednesday. Have no money, not even a cent. I mean, my bank account may be overdrawn for all I know right at this moment. It's like,
this is a nightmare. It must be a nightmare.
I slept fairly good, though. I think I got close to... The cat didn't bother me too much till, like, towards really close to before I woke up. So I, like, the first 6 hours of sleep or so were, like, sound. And then it was the last 2 that were on and off, on and off. But there were some kind of little dream images in between, in those little periods of dozing off and all, waking up, which means I was popping in and out of REM sleep, which means I probably got, in the grand scheme of things, close to 8 hours of sleep. So that's good for the body. My, gallbladder side was hurting a little bit of pain over there. It doesn't seem to be bothering me right at this moment. I had a BM when I got up, which was good. These are things that people who are interested in the, in the life of this vlogger. So anyway, yeah, I guess it doesn't have to be a long show, because how long can you talk about it? I got the usual 30, 60 emails, but there's about 30 of them. I mean, because I have a Rumble page, just out of courtesy, you tend to, you follow certain people. And I don't have the time, and no one has the time. I mean, you can't literally watch videos by everyone you follow, right? I mean, even if you watched them all day long, you couldn't. And for example, my videos, my videos go close to 2 hours. Today's won't go half that length. But I mean, there's a lot of people who have long form videos, that have 2 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour shows. So, you can't be following 1,000 people and watch every one of them. See, that's another flaw in the whole system of the internet that, that people don't realize. And it affects people's, I guess I'm not monetized, obviously, but it affects people who are monetized, because I think they want you to see the whole, like they judge people based on watching the whole video in its entirety or something like that. At least on YouTube, I think that's one of the factors. That's why people always say, and make sure you stay and watch till the end. We'll all have a special bonus thing, right? Yeah, that has something to do with that. Don't know exactly. Don't work for the company. Anyway, so think about the same thing. Apply the same thing to like Twitter, Facebook, anything. And that's why I say, it's just not as good as it, when I always say the 90s were better, from all accounts, and the internet's broken. Yeah, it's like, when you had good cable television, I have no TV now. I mean, I got rid of satellite cable. Forget it. It's useless. I'm trying to keep an ear open for like rain, because I have this air conditioner off to the other side of the room that that catches the raindrops. And it's like, forecasts are so bad. They say 5 o'clock, and, it could be now. I'm just hoping that they're off by an hour and it doesn't rain till maybe 6. But what I was getting at, if you go back just to the 90s, prior to where the internet went mainstream, there were no smartphones. You had cell phones, and you had some cell phones that were synced into, some business software and stuff like that, But generally speaking, the average person didn't even have an email address, and then it was AOL, but that was like so hokey. I mean, it was really weird. So it wasn't until you got pretty much into the 2000s that, things started to, this whole new dynamic, took hold. So in the you say up until the 90s, through the 90s, the whole decade really up to that point, you still had magazines, you still had rock radio. Clear Channel had been buying up all the stations. The FCC got changed and gave Clear Channel the ability to basically take over radio in this country and homogenize it. That's why the same music's been being played for the past 20-some years. And all the music sounds alike, and it's like the same 16 producers are doing everything from country to rock to, hip-hop to, you name it, whatever. It's just like, it sounds the same. And everybody's got a beat to something, right? But there's no, but they don't have dance halls or anything, I don't know. And the club, well, I guess they might be, clubs are reopening into certain places, but, who knows. But whatever the case may be, you had magazines, you had really good cable TV, really good entertainment productions. You still had remnants of good radio, and what wasn't good over the air, you had people, I was doing it and other people were doing it. We were doing online radio back then, which people just aren't simply aware of because they don't understand that we were doing it, that it was there. But everybody was into it, and we were getting major audiences. Newspapers still had legitimacy, there were decent journalists, there were investigative journalism was still a real thing. And, the whole 9 yards. And life was okay. It had its problems. And politics was always somewhere in the background. So politicians was for, and the news was for news junkies and people who were into that kind of thing. It was like a small percentage of the population. The average person had no idea what was going on in world of politics. And the only news they knew was like something weird, like that was the decade when, the OJ car chase or something, right? And everybody's like watching a car chase on TV. But I mean, unless it was some event, that was it. Otherwise, people basically just were into whatever their thing was. Sports, going to shows, concerts, right? Whatever their interest would be, going on vacations, just doing stuff, making love, hanging out, dating, It was just fun, life. We're like, hey, what do you want to do this weekend? Right? That was the 90s kind of. That would be the line, right? And someone would say, well, I don't know, people still say that. Yeah, but what are you going to do in this world? And where are you going to go, and what are you going to say? Right? What are you going to talk about? And do you know that your world is falling apart all around you? No. People are friggin' nuts. And the school systems were still somewhat normal. So, the administrators were already starting the indoctrination process, but, kids still had it hadn't overtaken the curriculum, what hadn't gone completely bonkers, right? Or bananas, as Dave Rubin says. There were still remnants of actually kids were learning things and coming home from school and having, and they were talking about something other than some kind of weird ideology or or something strange. So that was it. That was the end of the U.S. The U.S. died. Y2K. Sometimes I say that 2012 really was the end of the world. You know how everybody was the Mayan calendar 2012, blah blah blah. That by 2012, because then the smartphone was out and Facebook and all these things were actually starting to be used and were becoming ubiquitous with people. Everybody was jumping on. And, then there was that paradigm shift in the culture and life and living and just the way we, right? People were hooking up instead of falling in love, right? Divorce rate just kept rising. Marriage rates kept going down. People started not having kids. If they had kids, they were having them late in life. Just one. Stuff like that. So, you pick your time, but whether you're a guy like me, but yeah, I just generally say, yeah, Y2K was the beginning of the end, and by 2012, it was all over. And what we're living now, 10 years after 2012, is like borrowed time. And that's why it's such madness out there. And, this sounds a downer, and, people who are into positive thinking, spiritual type of things and all that stuff, don't like to hear this kind of talk, and I wish that things were different. But what I've seen and I've seen a lot, like I said, I quoted that line before from Blade Runner. If you could see what these eyes have seen, then you would realize that you need to focus on friends, family, yourself, the people around you, community, that sort of thing, and live the best life you can out until, the grid falls down or until your neighborhood becomes taken over by Mad Max, gangstas, right? I mean, this is where it's all headed until it's dystopia. Till inflation becomes so high that it doesn't matter how much money you're making, you're gonna, you're just not gonna be able to, make ends meet, so to speak. Always bothered me about ends meet too. People like there was a commercial where the guy said, and he used to show, it was the guy who used to be on Just Old House, but he left it early on. And he said when to make ends meet, and he was like putting like a frame together or something. And it's like, no, man, the expression "I can't make ends meet," this shows how little idiocy and arrogant these guys are, out of touch with reality. If you were somebody at the end of the meat aisle in a grocery store in the old days, they might still do it in some places, smaller towns. There was this little area right at the edge near the deli sometimes, and there was this little spot where there would be ends meat, and they were the ends of cold cuts, right? That come in these long things or blocks of cheese, and that the slicer couldn't get that far down. And so they would wrap these ends meats, in the cellophane, like they wrap things. And there'd be this little pile of cuts of cheese, piece of bologna, salami, whatever. Ends meat. And it was cheap. So it'd be like 57 cents for this, because it wasn't sliced, and it was like they had that weird round edge on it that you could see how it was molded originally into the casing it was in or whatever. That's ends meat. I can't make ends meet. That's why I say people, they just don't know. They just don't know. People can't cook. They can't. They don't even know how to shop. They go to the frozen food section and get everything they could put in a microwave. What are you going to do when grid goes down next year, right? Or there's a power failure next week, right? Oh, man. But people are nuts, so they're just glued to politics, and now it's war, right? And people become these like talking head expert kind of people, but they're listening to people who are just spewing lies and half-truths and don't really understand the socioeconomic geopolitics or whatever they're talking about. It was the same with the old, the endless, plague that, I guess is still going on, but it's just out, in the background now, as far as the news is concerned. It's like people would have these like little bits of knowledge, like they think as if they understood something about, biology, chemistry, or what have you. But they didn't, but they would talk about it like they knew it because they saw some announcer say something or somebody. And it's like, or some doctor even. But you can go on the internet and listen to a doctor, and trust me, I know that part. And, and there's a doctor from some major, respectable hospital or, medical school. And he's saying, looking for like what you should eat if you have such and such an ailment, right? And he'll say, yeah, the diet should be based on this, and you should avoid, eat high fiber and blah, 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 No mention of anything about carbs or anything about sugars. Avoid fats and eat a high fiber diet. And here's some suggestions: broccoli, blah, 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 grains, whole grains, blah, blah, blah. Then suddenly you go to a doctor or find another doctor, and the doctor says, don't eat grains, whatever you do, and avoid sugars and carbs. You're going... I just been that other doctor from from that major medical center told me to eat grains and a high fiber diet and just avoid fats, right? And now you're telling me if fats don't matter and eat whole grains, and now you're telling me avoid grains at all costs, and sugars, and obviously carbs are sugars. So you see what I mean? And then these people, they parade them out on television, or they come on these vlogs, and they the Joe Rogan show has a nutritionist or something on who goes there and tells this stuff. The next day you go to the store and you can't even buy whatever they told you. But you're lucky that you can't buy it, because a couple of weeks later you're going to find somebody from Harvard Med or, Cedars-Sinai or Johns Hopkins or the Mayo Clinic say that's hogwash, or you'll do some research and you'll find some peer-reviewed medical journals, right? Published journals that actually have done a study of 40,000 people proving that whatever that person said was wrong. But we don't care about that as long as they parade out. It's like they parade out all these generals now with this, this jingoism war, war for profit. Media's making a fortune on it. And these guys, it's like they're saying, well, here's what's going to happen, and I would come in from this angle, and Putin did this, and right? It's like, what do you know, man? You're basically some bureaucrat. You're a Pentagon bureaucrat, right? You're former general, okay? You don't know what's going on, right? See what I mean? In the old days, and when the old days I'm talking about is just back, going back, before the world ended in 2012 or with Y2K, they would actually bring on the actual person, would do an interview, somebody involved. This is like mostly Kona coffee, but I put the Kona coffee in the 100% Colombian coffee can. It's in the refrigerator. So for the next I don't know, so many shows, I'll be drinking mostly Kona coffee because it's mostly on the top. I did mix it in. I like kind of scooped a little bit down, but I didn't go down to the bottom to make it like a total Kona Colombian blend. So it's mostly Kona. I figured this mostly Kona coffee but there's some Colombian in it. It's okay. It's fine. I'm drinking black coffee these days. I'm not putting any kind of thing in it. So apart from the, an uncomfortable chair with occasional backache and, like I say, a little bit of a gallbladder pain here or there, it's all right. Whatever stress I end up dealing with, as I have to head up to the attic to deal with that stuff. It looks like the rain has been pushed back a little bit. There's only a 24% chance of rain at 5 a.m. now. So all I could do, today is a 90% chance of rain all day long, and tomorrow is a 90% chance of rain all day long. Tuesday, supposedly we have a day off, and then Wednesday it's back to thunderstorms, and Thursday thunderstorms. So all we could do is hope that that the rain holds out. You can't tell because I live in the Appalachian Mountains, kind of come through here. And so those things, the way the clouds come in and up through, I guess, the valley or whatever it's called, you can't trust the weather of the region in general because you could get a cloud burst or not. Right? The mountains could block the cloud. Or the clouds could come in here and it could rain here and I could talk to somebody, and I do occasionally talk to somebody who's just up the road, less than a half hour or so. As the crow flies, way less than that because you have to go over the mountain, If there weren't a mountain there, they'd probably be just 15 minutes away or something. And they'll say, hey, it's sunny up here, right? But they're on the other side of the mountain. Like the movie. The other side of the mountain. The good old Appalachian. This is like the northern Appalachians. I'm in the mid-Atlantic states. But, yeah. And I'm not all that far from one of the entrances to the Appalachian Trail. I'm not close. But it's less than an hour, away if you wanted to get on the trail. One of the places that's, where you could get dropped off and it says Appalachian Trail and you could at least get up there. But, you could climb the Appalachians anywhere and with your compass or, just common sense, find the trail. Probably from just 10 minutes away from where I am. But if you want to go to official entrance. But yeah, I scanned my emails. Like I said, I had a bunch of emails as usual, 60 emails. Half of them are spam. And, well, no, they're all spam. They were all spam. Well, there was one from my bank and notifying me that there was a new statement. That could be a frightening thing. So, because it's just a generic thing. There's a new statement available at your bank. Now, that could just be that my statement for the month is available, or it could mean, hey, you bounced a check. Check your bank account. So 59 out of the 60 were pure spam. But like I was saying, they're from a lot of it, I'm even considering stuff I get from Rumble, people follow. So I guess I'm going to have to turn off that in settings, I don't want to receive notifications. So I have to go log on and do that. Which you don't want to do because sometimes you like to know. In fact, it's a nice way to scan what's going on is through your email. Because if you're if you have Rumble, it's when I used to be on Twitter, I had notifications, but I don't do that anymore. And I quit Facebook, by the way. But you could scan on Rumble because I follow people who are, who do shows, so to speak. And so you get a quick view going down that notification list because it's got the photo screen capture of their, video, vlog, whatever, and podcast. And and you can see that they're talking about, and that's what kind of set me off this morning. It was like just utter complete madness. And it's the same old thing every day. But I mean, it changes like maybe a couple times a year. Like I say, we're just transitioning. We've transitioned out of the plague, which is, has been in the forefront, right? And now we're into war. But both of those things, one, big pharma was making billions of profit. Now the war profiteers, the military contractors, the media, and the politicians are making billions of dollars, right? Because they're invested in those stocks. You tell me Nancy Pelosi husband didn't buy military contractor stocks, right? And oil stocks and stuff like that, And you watch Bitcoin, that's bubbling under, and I don't know what's going on, but I'm just going to quick check it if it's, Bitcoin value today, 38. I don't know why Bitcoin has gone down. So there's some game being played. I've heard this story, and I'm not an expert on this, but this is something for you to beware if you're a Bitcoin person. Because you have the Bitcoin people who are saying, oh, Bitcoin's going to go up to $1 million a coin, right? Like Max Kaiser guy says that. And I heard Tim Pool, my favorite, whipping boy, right, say that, on a podcast that I watched. But it's down to 38 now. And if you remember, I used to do the weather every day, and I used to be the morning show was the morning show. So I would do the weather, Bitcoin, stock, any notable news sometimes and stuff. Last year when I was into it. I wasn't into it, but I was just trying to give you a full, if you were going to tune in, I'm going to give you the world, right? In the first few minutes of the show, and then we get into the rant or whatever the topic of the day was. But I've listened to I've looked into this more seriously than just hearing these people who are highly invested in it, hoping it goes to $1 million. And there's one school of thought, and again, this is just a school of thought. So I don't know. I can't guarantee this. I wouldn't go out and buy or sell based upon it. But the other one is that there are some people that believe that the whole value of Bitcoin, all right, which is, in other words, the entire, ecosystem, so to speak. Now, we know China has factories literally dedicated, farms, Bitcoin mining farms, factories doing that. And that apparently Russia may or may not have had those things as well. And we all know Russia and China are sitting on a lot of gold too, by the way. All right? And you have to remember a country like China, where you could have the state running these massive Bitcoin mining operations, are more likely to, be solving algorithms, or solving the, you have to solve this thing in order to get a Bitcoin, and that's why, it's hard to do. You can't, the individual, it's hard to do because the cost, the power involved, even though there are these incredibly low power chips now, but I mean, you have to be a real geek, computer geek, to be able to build a machine, to do it, to mine in your own house and have it be cost effective, right? But when the price of Bitcoin is up there, it's kind of cost effective because, I mean, if you were to get one Bitcoin, even at 38,000, which it is today, as long as you didn't spend $38,000, on equipment power to get 38,000, whatever you got, say you spent $20,000 or $25,000 to get there, or 28,000, just as rounded off. you made 10 grand. Well, that's not a bad 10 grand. If you can make 10 grand a couple of times a year, 4 times a year, you're making $40,000. I don't care who you are. You don't need much more than that to live comfortably in this country. Unless you're obsessed with getting a yacht or living in some beach resort or something like that. But those places are the first places that are going to crash and burn, as this house of cards falls. But back to Bitcoin, and like I say, this is just something that may or may not be true. But someone was saying, okay, well, the overall value of Bitcoin, and I'll just look it up real quick. Overall value of Bitcoin, let's look at total value of Bitcoin. Let me show you this so this is, you're seeing what I'm seeing. At its current price around 46, see how Google's broken? The current price is 38. So somehow this stuff, the things that they decide to put up top aren't, and notice there's also 119 million results, okay? But this one's from January 5th, but today's price, they're not even mentioning that. You think a company like Alphabet, Google, would have algorithms and these people making 6 and 7 figures working for them would have ability to have algorithms in their AI to be able to alter these kinds of statements. You see? Well, anyway, see, here's like Barron saying Bitcoins could hit 100,000 if investors, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, at its current price of 46, it's not, it's 38. Bitcoin has a market cap of 870 billion compared with 2.6 trillion for gold. All right? Now, follow me with the logic here, what I'm trying to explain to you and what this other individuals were talking about. Sorry about that. All right, it's not 870 billion, obviously, because 46 is 10, thousand more. So that market cap, the total amount of Bitcoin is probably closer to maybe it's 700,000 or something like that. 750 billion, right? Or whatever. 750,000, say. Let's be generous. Because it goes up and down. It'll be back up to 40, in the 40s. Well, what they're saying is that somebody can capture the market of Bitcoin. And there's arguments against that saying no, because it's decentralized and there's still peer-to-peer ability to conduct transactions and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is there are these exchanges that exist. And so people are constantly exchanging. So people get Bitcoin, like especially some of the people who became Bitcoin millionaires. So like say I was holding on to enough Bitcoin. Like I have some Bitcoin. It's a very small amount, all right? But I would log on to an exchange, and I would basically say I want to cash out. But I want to cash out in US dollars, okay? So the exchange now is holding Bitcoin. And it's the whole nature of what an exchange, think of the word exchange. So somebody with billions and billions of dollars can go into these various exchanges and exchange dollars or whatever, right, for Bitcoin and buy up Bitcoin. All right? And so what this person was trying to say is that so the central banks, can get together, or a consortium of central banks beyond like the U.S. Fed, including, the Euro folks and stuff like, the West in general, say, because that's what's going on. Ukraine is all about NATO, right? And military contractors and people and media. I mean, it's all about, and the EU, it's all about the old world order, trying to basically topple Russia. In other words, they pushed Putin backed him into a corner where he had no choice. He didn't want to do this. His own generals didn't want to do this. But they pushed him and prodded him and literally forced him to do it. Because basically what they said was that if you don't do this, see that they want to topple Russia, and they may be successful with this. Okay? Right? But basically what they did was they said, well, no, first of all, there was a pro-Russian president of Ukraine. This goes back to the the Obama administration, and that's when Biden was the point man. I'm going to go real fast with this because but you should know this. So Biden went over there, and his son Hunter went over there. Hunter got in on the board of the oil company, and Biden was basically helped push out, the president. And the CIA, there was supposedly a coup, and they basically got rid of the pro-Russian aspects of Ukraine and turned it into this pro-West, EU, NATO Ukraine. And so then the threat was that NATO already has missiles all along the border of Russia, and so that Putin says, hey, like I said in yesterday's video, which, by the way, is some weird things happen with that video because it is the truth. I posted it on one spot and it vanished. I have to check the site to see today if they vanished twice. But basically, how would you like it if all along your property line people had nuclear missiles aimed at you? And so he said he wanted NATO to pull back off the border because he had no intention of attacking the West, right? But NATO was like hardline and was just throwing more and more missiles there. And then they were threatening on basically taking Ukraine, and Ukraine is like deep into Russia. And so there would be they would literally have nukes and even conventional weapons almost inside of Russia, in effect, if you understand how the shape of the country is, the geography over there. All right? And so Putin had no choice but to push back, threaten to push back, and told them he would attack if they didn't, and they just called his bluff. And that's what happened, and that's why we are where we are. It's a classic example of socioeconomic geopolitics. None of the players involved care about the human life lost in that. It's a hard thing to deal with. They're just looking at the profits they're making. Price of oil's gone sky high, okay? The military contractor stocks are up 10, 14, 15%, right? Media stocks and media are making a fortune on commercials because it's 24/7 and people are glued to like the war on TV news, right? The vloggers are making big money because people are watching, want to know what their hunger for Ukraine news. You see what I mean? So everybody's profiting on this while real people on the ground are dying. But the military contractors, the people who own stock in the corporations, and the politicians who are all buying stock in those corporations, right, and trading, Wall Street traders, all right, and the media, they don't care about those people. They pretend they care, but they don't. See, when you see a media person look like they're teary-eyed or something weird like that, that's basically hypocrisy for profit because they're making a ton of money, but they're claiming to have some moral standards. But in reality, it's all pretense. Okay, we know that. But back to Bitcoin. So the idea is that the West, which is this ever fading West, which is basically Western civilization, they know it's falling. All right. It's not going to survive, but they're desperate. And so they're as bad as Russia, Putin, not Russia or the Russians, just like the things that we do. Like I was against going to, these endless wars that were for oil and for military industrial complex. I didn't vote for them. I didn't want my tax money going to that kind of stuff, right? So it's not the people from a particular country. That's why I always say Biden should have to. It should be like the old days, the king, and their knights, which would be their, like the equivalent of the president and their cabinet. They should be on the front lines of these wars, right? Instead of just sending over, cannon fodder, people they don't care about. Because it's hypocrisy for profit. They pretend, oh, this is sad. They might even get a teary eye. But it's hypocrisy. They don't really care. Did you check your stock portfolio? Sadly enough, anybody who invested in military contractor stocks, Merck stocks, oil stocks, right, and even media stocks, publicly trading on the stock market, if you did that, within 3 weeks ago or so, you cash out right now. You made a fortune. You made better money than you could have made anywhere else. They were guaranteed ups. Doesn't matter if the stock market went down; those stocks went up. So the idea with Bitcoin, back to this, is part of this, is that the Fed, the central banking system, is going to implement a crypto system. It's just a matter of time and how they do it, all right? They want to do the blockchain technology, but they want to have a cryptocurrency. China's already, using one. And the idea is that, why print money? Why go through this old-fashioned system of fiat currency and all that kind of stuff when you can just have, control it a different way? And so it's not really true like Bitcoin peer-to-peer decentralized. They're planning a centralized cryptocurrency. You see? I mean, crypto is just encrypted, right? And then they're talking about this idea of once you have quantum computing come along, that you will be able to, and who knows what DARPA has. Like I gotta say, the technology that you're aware of is always like 5, 10, could be even 15, 20 years behind. Like they don't tell you what they can do. They release it, piecemeal. And it's a very old thing. It's old corporate stuff. I know that from years ago, companies. In other words, a corporation would have a 5-year plan. So when they would have their meetings with their board of directors, right, and their major stockholders, they would want to know their 5-year plan. And their 5-year plan in that presentation, which was closed to the public, they would show what they would be rolling out over the next 5 years, right? So a certain company like Xerox or something would say, well, we have this machine that will be rolling out, 4 years from now that's going to revolutionize the printing industry, because it's going to not just print, but it's going to be able to print and bind and put out a booklet all from, it's going to take desktop publishing to a whole new level, you see. And so that's how it works. It has always worked, and this is going back decades and decades and decades. So there's always the technology, and people like DARPA always have been, had the cutting edge technology, right? They have these contests every year. That's their thing. And if you look at some of their contests, they're insane, some of the challenges that they put out there. So it's more likely most of those challenges have been met. So the fact that DARPA may well have a quantum computer or some kind of supercomputer beyond our comprehension. If Apple's releasing these M1, M2, M2, MX Pro chips, and everybody's into this stuff now, these crazy chips that are very low power, but like ridiculously high processed. I saw a chip the other day, just came out this past week. There was like two wafers sandwiched together, and it's incredible power or incredible processing power, but very little input power as far as operation. So these things exist, and so you understand that they may well have already cracked the crypto. And there's people out there, oh, it's impossible, And some really cool, great coders and people who like have almost can grasp like the concept of all these kinds of things would be in denial of that. But see, that's the problem. You listen to the media. You listen to the talking heads too much, right? You listen to the guys who have vlogs who are like work for MIT, and you assume, well, that guy's an MIT professor. Yeah, but he doesn't know what's going on, within DARPA. They don't know what's going on. These guys all aren't privy to that. You have no idea. I worked in Washington, D.C. I lived and worked in Capitol Hill for a while, many years ago. And I saw things that I still won't talk about. You can't imagine where they were then. And that was like 35 years ago or something like that. Ridiculous amount of time ago. I forget how long ago it was. It's a long time ago. Stuff I saw. If you saw what I saw with these eyes. So anyway, there's this theory that because crypto, gold is in the trillions of dollars, but again, China and Russia have a lot of gold. Okay? So they may have more than half of the world's gold. See, that's one of the things. That's another thing that's freaking out the West. Right? That the East has so much. They're also kind of pissed off that India abstained from the vote against Russia on the Ukrainian matter. They just abstained. They didn't vote. They didn't vote for or against. So you've got the entire East, right? India, China, Russia, right? Where all the population of the world is, right? And then you have this old world order, the Little West, right? And they're fiefdom trying to bring in like neo-feudalism and NATO, like an old outdated World War II thing, UN, which is like never did a damn thing good, for anybody except, for some photo op, right? Where's the UN? Why didn't you, where's the UN in Ukraine, right? UN has all these jeeps, trucks, tanks, and these white hat UN people, right? So why isn't there a UN force in there? Peacekeepers, they used to call them. So why aren't UN peacekeepers all over, didn't go right all over there? That's what the purpose of the UN is about. Ukraine's a member of the UN. They're not a member of NATO or the EU or anything like that, but they're a member of the UN. So you understand the hypocrisy here. What's going on? So again, back to Bitcoin before the rain starts. So the idea is that these Western powers who do have the trillions of dollars, right, and just can create it, and the U.S. dollar still is the currency, world currency, right, out of the basket of currencies as they call it, the dollar still, reigns supreme, even though it's worthless technically, but, it's like that book by Noam Chomsky, because we said so, we say so, or whatever. The line was in that. The point of the matter is, it's like, we say our dollar's worth $1. If you don't like it, here's a gun, So what if the West, the central banks, the Euro and U.S. central bankers decided to corner the market on Bitcoin through various exchanges and all that kind of stuff. And so we're watching Bitcoin go down in value right now. So the question is, why would Bitcoin go down in value at this time? Especially when, there was talk that probably Russia would be forced, because they were taken out of the SWIFT system, this banking system, and have all these sanctions put on them, that Russia would have to be using Bitcoin, trading in Bitcoin, right? And so that Bitcoin, there would be an uptick in, so the value of Bitcoin conceivably should have gone up at this moment. But instead it's gone down. So why would anyone be selling? Why would anyone be getting out of Bitcoin? That's really weird. And the other thing about it is, the scarier part about this is that as Bitcoin price gets lower and lower, down to 38, remember Bitcoin was up to 66 or something at one point last year, right? So we're talking about, this, we're talking about a major drop, right? 40% loss. Okay. And chances are the thing is going to go up, like that Forbes, was it Forbes or whatever article it was? Article was like saying, people going, it could go up to 100,000. And like I say, these other people are like, I think they're dreaming, but they say 1 million. But 100,000 is realistic. So this is just more of an incentive for the central bankers to buy up through these various exchanges. Like I say, you could buy Bitcoin. And so why not buy it at 38? Why wait for it to go back up to 42 or 44 or 45? So not only are they cornering the market, but they must have already cornered it to bring the price down. And by forcing the price down, that's allowing them to even buy more, so that they could ultimately will corner the market. So maybe they haven't cornered it, but they have enough controlling. They have enough Bitcoin that they can move the market. Do you see? Move the market. It's like if you were a major stockholder, you don't have to be a majority stockholder in a company, but you could make moves that can affect the stock price, right? If you sell chunks of that stock, the way that shows up in the exchange, the stock exchange, like I say, all these things go through exchanges, otherwise they're worthless. Just a thing existing is nothing. I mean, well, they're nothing to begin with because it's all in the ether to begin with, right? But it has to go through an exchange or exchange hands, so to speak, or exchange computer in order for it to have a value, and there's a value at that exchange, and then there's somebody who takes a commission. And sometimes there's multiple, various brokers and different people who've got their hands to get a piece of that, when something changes hands. So they may already be at such a point where they don't have a corner on the Bitcoin market, so to speak. So that's why these naysayers are going, you're full of it. But they may have accrued enough Bitcoin that they can move the market. And as they move the market lower, that gives them more buying opportunities to buy Bitcoin at a low price. And when the time is right, all right, they can move the market or have the perception of the market when the market moves up, and they could, double or treble their investment. Meanwhile, but in the meantime, forcing a country like Russia to sell its Bitcoin, do you see? Or to sell its gold, because they really want its gold. They want that gold too, to keep this war going. The only wild card in this whole thing is oil, the price of oil, and Russia's an oil-rich country. And so with oil trading, I don't know let's see what oil was trading at. These things trade on the weekend. Current price of crude oil. Let's see what oil's going for. Crude oil continuous contract $115 a barrel. Brent crude oil continuous $118. Natural gas contracts 4.9. I'm not sure what that means because I'm not an expert on how that's, but I understand both of these, Brent and crude oil, 118 and 115 respectively. Okay, so the price of oil has continued to rise. So remember, 118, 115, 118 for oil, a barrel of oil, is literally, it's almost approaching, it's almost triple what it was several years ago. Almost. I mean, it's not exactly. But, it's doubled. It's more than doubled. That is a factual statement. So Putin has made windfall profits on oil and is still selling oil as far as we know. So he has no need to deplete his gold supply or their holdings in Bitcoin. Do you understand? And see, that's why I try to tell you this is all about socioeconomic geopolitics. As much as we human beings, okay, we like to believe that, looks like they're pushing back the rain, man. I hope they do. Please, 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 oh, please. All right? I mean, a drizzle I could probably deal with. All right? So, this is an interesting perspective, and you don't hear people talk like this. I mean, sometimes you do, but they're like these guys, it's like a Bloomberg or a CNBC type of conversation, and these guys are talking in corners, and they're using jargon and all this other kind of stuff, and they don't really want to put it in like human terms. And they won't tie in they won't do the hyphenate like I do, the socioeconomic geopolitics. See? They don't use that. In fact, as far as I know, I'm the only guy to put all those things together. You hear some people talk about geopolitics, right? But you rarely hear someone say socioeconomic geopolitics. And that's how the world is really run, right? And you have to take that into consideration, and you have to detach yourself from your moral and ethical beliefs, feelings, emotions, when you talk about these issues. See? Because in other words, the people who are doing this, they're not emotionally, morally, ethically considering, having any of that taking into consideration when they're acting. They're acting out of pure greed, right? Okay? So we can feel for those suffering, all right? And we do. Most rational people do. But what I'm trying to do is explain to you what these people are doing, right? I mean, what's going on in Ukraine is an absolute tragedy, all right, from a human standpoint, all right? And I abhor it, the whole concept of war, let alone war for profit, war profiteering. But I mean, I don't see the reason in the 21st century for there to be a justification for war, period. There's really no reason. There's too many ways, too many ways people could come to terms over things. There's no reason for wars. Just like there's no reason for killing. There's no excuse for murder. But like I say, 2,000 people a week on average are murdered in the U.S., all right? The death toll in the U.S. from murders and from, like I said yesterday and the day before, from diseases that are treatable, right, preventable, even curable in the U.S., which are 40,000 a week. That's according to CDC statistics. If you divide their annual numbers. That far exceeds any deaths that are happening in Ukraine by tenfold or 20-fold. I don't know how many. But you don't see the media covering that. Or you never hear politicians talk about that in perspective. You know? Like you might even hear a news story. They'll say in Chicago there were 14 people murdered, or 7 people were killed, and so many people were shot or knifed or stabbed or strangled or whatever. Because it's not even a gun issue anymore. You know, a lot of these major gangs, they use knives. They kill with knives. They don't even kill with guns. Right? So it's not, you can't even like go, it's a Second Amendment issue. We'll pass a law and then we'll solve that crime issue. See, that's the whole thing with the media. It's hypocrisy for profit. You know? There already are laws on the books that basically say killing another person is a crime, and you go to jail for life. Some places they still have the death penalty, I do believe. But there's still 2,000 people on average being murdered in the U.S. every week. Week. In 2 weeks, that's 4,000 people. Okay? You know? So, you have to basically see things in that reality. And so that's the human story. That's the human tragedy. The human tragedy is what's going on on the ground level in Ukraine. The human story is also what's going on the ground level here in the U.S. And clearly in the U.S., despite the sensationalism of the news media of showing you pictures of tanks and jets and bombs blowing off and apartment buildings, in rubble, they're not telling you that in the U.S. more people are dying than are dying in Ukraine. And people are violently. Think about that. More people are dying violently in the U.S. than are dying in Ukraine. Right? So that's why I'm trying to approach this from a socioeconomic geopolitics and explain to you that these people, the same people who are ignoring the tragedy in the U.S. and have been ignoring this tragedy that is ongoing. This isn't something new. We didn't just start, having 2,000 some people murdered a week. This has been going on for years, all right? Decades. We didn't just start having 40,000 people on average a week dying of ridiculous things like type 2 diabetes, complications of heart disease, right? Kidney disease, things that are based upon foods that they're, FDA's approving and, that are publicly on the market, advertised on these same media stations that are showing you war 24/7, right? Doctors that are, allowing big pharma to have them push certain drugs that law firms are coming on TV saying, if you took this such and such and such and such, you have a right to this, and then, join this class action suit and you'll get compensated for the death of your loved one. Right? You've seen those. You see them all the time. They're like one of the biggest advertisers next to the big pharmaceutical companies and the junk food companies and fast food companies that are killing 40-some thousand people a week. Right? And as far as the murder is concerned, nobody cares about that. That's being ignored. And remember, that's just murdered. That's not people maimed. Right? Got brain damage. Right? Raped. Assaulted. Lost their house. You see what I mean? So, this is the hypocrisy for profit by the war-profiteers. And it's all socioeconomic geopolitics. And people need to understand that. And that's why Western civilization is falling. So people who like to say, well, they've got Putin backed up against the wall and he's going to lose and this, that, the other, well, they're probably right. All right? They pushed him against the wall and he blinked and he fell for it. He's getting older. He's a dictator. He's also sitting on a lot of nuclear weapons. You don't mess with an angry bear. You know what I mean? You don't corner a bear. Because what happens usually with something like that, you know, right? An angry bear, that it's going to probably lash out at you with its last, you know, it's not going to just sit in the corner and then huddle and roll into a ball, right? And you go over and pet it on its head, or you could just leave the room. No. When the bear's cornered, it's going to lash out at you. And you're going to start shooting at it and blah, 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 but it's probably going to lash out with its big claws and its big teeth. And if those big claws and big teeth happen to be ICBMs or whatever, you know, it's curtains. So that's the miscalculation of the West. Number 2. First miscalculation was pushing Putin in the corner. All right. This could have been solved diplomatically as early as the Obama administration. That's what Biden's job as vice president, when he was vice president, was his job was the point guy for Ukraine. But instead he went over there and he got his son a job on the, working for that corrupt oil guy. He's on the board. And Biden, the big guy, got a percentage of that. That's all come out now, right? But no one cares. That story doesn't have legs. It never got covered. It's being buried, but it's actually come out now. It's in black and white. You can read those documents now. So this is something that's gone on for almost a decade. And Putin has been saying the same thing for a decade. And so there should have been, that's when the UN, NATO, or NATO, EU, and the US and Russian representatives, diplomats should have sat down. But they didn't want to. The war-profiteers saw money. They saw Afghanistan. Remember, it was Trump who basically started removing troops from Afghanistan and was going to end that war. He just wasn't going to just walk out like Biden did. But he started pulling troops out, So the military-industrial complex saw the writing on the wall. Right? ISIS was defeated. Trump killed all those, those other terrorists down in the Middle East. The whole world was at peace for 4 years while he was around. And so they're going, hey, man, we can't have peace. In other words, they're in the business of making tanks and, jet fighter jets and missiles and bombs and bullets. And you know what I mean? These are military contractors, weapons manufacturers. That's their whole corporate structure. That's their profit. That's where they make their money. So they need to have constant wars. Right? So this was the one that they dreamed up, just like they dreamed up the Middle Eastern War and Iraq War. Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Everybody knows that now. That's his historical fact now. But that doesn't mean that they didn't make a trillion or trillions of dollars on it, the military contractors, the war profiteers, and that 600-some thousand Iraqis or whatever were killed, not to mention how many U.S. soldiers were maimed and killed, right? All for war profiteering. And how many people made money on stock, right? The stocks of those companies. And media coverage of those wars. Shock and awe. They had names for it, right? And then these mercenary companies, right? That went in there and did the stuff that the troops weren't allowed to do. You see? And then, of course, the whole private army nonsense and CIA and all that crazy stuff that goes on all the time. So you have to understand socioeconomic geopolitics. And like I say, injustice. People are really good at talking about injustice and bigotry and all that kind of stuff here in the U.S. But they don't understand that it pales in comparison to what's going on, right, in the halls of Congress, and in these military contractors, and within the media itself, And, I watched some guy yesterday try to downplay the fact that in Ukraine, there's a major neo-Nazi movement that are basically fighting against the Russians. And they were trying to Putin brought this up in his, it was kind of a crazy speech, if you got to admit, but I mean, we don't understand Russia. So, stuff does get lost in translation. Okay. You have to accept that. But either way, taking on face value, yeah, it was a little over the top, but at least he mentioned that, and they can't, and that is a fact. So Ukraine does have, it's not as if it's an overwhelming amount of people, but there is an organized, contingent of neo-Nazis that are basically fighting on the side of Ukraine against Russia. So Russia is fighting neo-Nazis in Ukraine, which is pretty pathetic. And if that were going on here in the U.S. is siding with the neo-Nazis, and so is NATO. Right? Which is what I try to been telling you all along, that the EU is just Hitler's plan for a greater Germany. Because that's what the EU really is. It's mainly Germany with France, right? The rest of the countries aren't really anything. But it's a greater Germany. So Hitler may be dead, may have lived out his life in luxury down in Argentina or something on some plantation. But the thing is, in the end, he won, because he got what he wanted, his plan for a greater Germany basically was the blueprint for the EU. And what we're seeing is that plan play out in the expansion of taking over Russia, which is exactly what that psychopath would have done if he was still alive. So like I say, there's a lot more to this news than you realize. And unless you understand socioeconomic geopolitics and are able to separate your feelings of the tragedy on the ground from what these monsters, these megalomaniacs who are doing this, these war profiteers, you have to put yourself into their mindset to understand what they're doing and how evil these people really are. Right? And at the same time, there's a tragedy. But, it's not, this thing, this is the reality. But there's worse, as bad as it is over there. And it is bad. And I'm the first one to say it. It's every fiber of my being is disgusted by what's going on there. Okay? Because I just don't, that's just not me. I don't go for that. But at the same token, what's happening here in our country that is being hidden from you. All right? The media is ignoring, the politicians are ignoring. See, while the politicians, the media, all right, and the war profiteers, the Wall Streeters, the central bankers, and the military contractors, well, they're all raking in billions of dollars in profit on this, venture of theirs. That's what it is to them, this venture overseas. People here are dying in the tens of thousands a week. And that's being hidden from you. We have no-go zones in the United States in practically every major city in this country. But you don't see it because there are no-go zones. You don't go there. You don't live there. You don't see it. You hear people talk about gangs. There's millions of gang members in this country. But they're not in your neighborhood. Not neighborhood that ends with the cul-de-sac, right? So you don't see that. Not in your development, your gated community, or your doorman building, right? Or your suburban house in some other area, or country, maybe, some nice house out in the country. But it eventually is going to hit you because these people are just as bad as the war profiteers. They have this hunger, insatiable hunger for more more power, more money, more stuff, more things, more bling bling, more whatever. Do you understand? They just want more. They want to expand their territory. It's never enough. Right? It's never enough. And the media just ignores it. The politicians ignore it. In many cases, the gangs control them. Places like Chicago and Detroit, those mayors are scared to death of the gangs. You know, even in places like New York and L.A., they don't want to mess with it. I lived in both. Well, I lived in D.C. D.C.'s the same way. But I lived in New York, and I've told my story, my L.A. story, where I accidentally walked into a blue neighborhood wearing a red shirt. And I had to take my shirt off. I could have been killed if some guy wouldn't have called me out and said, he said, buddy, get that shirt off, man. And there was a group of people down, and I was wearing just a red T-shirt in the summertime going to get a 6-pack from a place. I'll tell you the story again because so few people watch the show. It was at a party, just a house parties, few people, not that many, but we ran out of beer and it was like, who's going to make a beer run? I was like, I'll go. So I went to go to buy a couple of 6-packs of beer. It's only about 6 blocks away from where they were. This was in Venice, okay? Venice, California, And so I go walking and it was summertime and I'm just wearing shorts and a T-shirt. And it was a red T-shirt. And I got to this point and some dude comes up to me and goes, hey, man, get that shirt off. You're going to get killed. And I'm like, and I realized because I understood about the Crips and the Bloods then, right? Which, Crips, Bloods red, Crips blue. It basically was red, blue neighborhood control. So luckily it was a thin T-shirt. I just folded this thing up. Just crumbled it up and put it in my back pocket like a handkerchief. I mean, a bulge coming out of my back pocket, but it was hidden. All right. And so I'm walking shirtless into, the liquor store, beer store. And of course, on the door, it says no shoes, no shirt, no service. But I walk in anyway. And the guy right behind the counter goes, hey, no shirt, no service. Read the sign. And I just kept walking towards him. I go, look, man, I got a red shirt in my back pocket. All right? I just want 2 6-packs of beer. I'll get out of your hair. Okay, man? Do you understand? And he knew exactly what I said. He didn't he didn't get weird. He knew exactly what I was saying. And he said, all right, we'll get them and get out of here. He sold me 2 6-packs and I walked out. And on my way back, I saw that guy and I took one of the beers out of one of the 6-packs and I gave it to him. I said, thanks, buddy. I appreciate, you giving me the heads up. I went back to the party with 9 beers. Well, 11 beers instead of 12. What'd you drink one on the way home? No, I told the story. But the average person has no idea. And that was years ago. And things have changed and there's different gangs and different things going on and all that stuff. But the point is, that's a true frickin' story. But the average person doesn't know anything like that. And that's a mild story. There are much more crazier stories than that. So like I say, the average person in the U.S. just is living comfortable and they don't know what's coming down the pike and what's heading their way. All right? And you don't get socio-economic geopolitics. I'm just looking to see if the weather's altering itself here. If it's changing at all. It's still kind of problematic that something could happen shortly.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
But anyway, I think I made my point. So in understanding this stuff, it's not a matter of taking sides. It's not a matter of good guys, bad guys. All right? The war-profiteers and the politicians and the media, they don't look at it like that. They may say that stuff, okay? But when they say it, it's just hypocrisy for profit. You have to get that through your head. I don't care how much you like that announcer, whether it's a woman, a guy, or whatever, how beautiful you think they are. All right? It's hypocrisy for profit. They're making money. Most of them are making, 7 figures plus. And the politicians, they go in, they get a salary, and they come out multimillionaires. These announcers, these news readers, these reporters are become millionaires. All right? And all of these people investing, right? All these war-profiteers, all those companies are multi-billion-dollar companies, if not trillion-dollar companies. And then all these people in the stock, the brokerage houses and the traders, they're making tons of money. And just to keep that alive, that idea I talked about Bitcoin, there's something fishy going on with that. Keep an eye out on that. I think that market's being played, and I think the central banks have gotten, or somehow through the exchanges have been buying up Bitcoin. They want to control it the best they can. And also, let's not forget that DARPA may already have some kind of super computer, all right? That may be able to decrypt crypto. You have to understand, you should see you have to be like me. I'm into this stuff. Watch this Anastasia girl who does, she's an engineer. Engineer's chip is into that kind of thing. There are some people out there. There are some amazing, fantastic, ridiculous chips that are being developed. The power of computing is beyond the average person's comprehension right now. And the point of the matter is, if a thing exists, you can guarantee DARPA has got a copy of it, or soon will. All right? Will be involved in implementation of it. Because they're certainly not using it on the Google search engine or on the YouTube algorithm, okay? Because the internet's pretty much broken. It's full of contradictions. It doesn't give, in one place we could look up the daily price of Bitcoin, and then we look for an answer, and it's giving you the price of Bitcoin from January 5th in a blurb that it puts up as its featured response answer. So that would be the equivalent of asking Siri a question. You see? So where are they putting their best minds? Where are they putting their best AI? Where are their algorithms? Really, what are they really working on? All right? That's the question you have to ask. Because you can't find a healthy, answer for a healthy diet for a gallbladder disease or a kidney stone or for some other kind of serious ailment, pre-op or post-op, or to prevent an operation, right? It's all contradictory, right? I couldn't even find a way to fix the other day I turned on my computers and none of my cameras were working. And I went through and there was like 7 different, I watched a couple videos. I have a Mac computer. I went to the Mac site, tech site. I looked on Google and various things that were there. None of the stuff they had there worked, Ultimately, I ended up just doing something, myself, figuring it out and then rebooting and doing some other stuff. But what I'm pointing out is that the internet is frickin' broken. It's pay to play, but even the stuff that's not pay to play, it's broken. And remember, Wikipedia is not an encyclopedia. It's just an ideological, archive of things that people constantly changes at the whim of people who want to get a certain narrative across to you. Unless it's something that's so matter-of-factual that it doesn't matter. Like, what is, if you look up the Liberty Bell, okay, well, there's the Liberty Bell, right? But I mean, anything else when it comes to a person's biography or an event or something like that, forget about Wikipedia and forget about Google or even DuckDuckGo or any kind of search. The media lies. Okay? That's a fact. The YouTubers, they just pull up the media stories. They show you what somebody tweeted. And then they sit there and they argue back and forth about it. That's what I'm saying. It's the same old thing. And the people who do YouTube stuff, instead of being like me, giving you real insight, right? You know, breaking down something. All right? Did you see me pull up anybody's Twitter feed? Right? No. I'm just giving you the only thing that we searched to look at matter of factually was to find a specific number, like a price of Bitcoin or something like that. It's the only thing you can trust is something that actually is of a matter of factual, unchangeable, right, thing, right? So wake up, people. This country, this house of cards is falling. Our infrastructure is failing. It's unfixable. It's gone beyond the point of being fixable. All right? And you think, and I'm not monetized. And that thing behind me, okay? Let me just get rid of the title card. This thing back here, you know what that says? I don't know. That says, presented to Tony Caravan Live for exceeding 3 views. It's a joke. It's an art piece. It's my set. Okay? I'm not monetized. Yes, Great Solar Stuff, I have a website, but it's linked to Amazon because I'm trying to turn you on to these power backup systems. Not even the solar panels. There's stuff there that could help you if the power goes out. I'm just trying to turn you on to it and saying, here's what I found. And like I have one back here in the old days, I was testing it. That's what's running that on-air light and that other light, by the way. It's being powered by this thing. It's not plugged into the wall. So I just find things, test them, and I tell you about it. And then I've written a bunch of books where I try to get into my mind and see how this thought process comes in and how I come about these things. And I've written these essays. And lately my books have just been flow of consciousness like these shows. They're unscripted. I had no idea where this show was going to end up today. All right? But anyway, I do have to end up this show.
Good morning.
Because I've got to prepare the way for this rain. So anyway, visit my site, ROCKFLUX.com, and there's links to everything I do there. It's no great website. It's just a site of links, okay? But, if you're interested, it would be nice if you would get one of my books, buy my book in print. They only cost like $9.95 on Amazon, but there's a link to it there. And if you go to Great Solar Stuff, you could find some power backup stuff. And I advise you to get it. And if you want to get some of my slogans like you don't know what you don't know and everything you know is wrong or game over on a hoodie or a hat or the logo, all that stuff, there's links to that on ROCKFLUX. That's all. It helps it helps me out. I got a leaky roof I'm trying to fix, man. I could use a couple extra bucks. I don't own any of this stuff. These are just links to like third-party sites where they might give me a 50-cent commission or something. Anyway, I hope I got something across to you today because this is really important. I mean, this is life-affecting things that you need to know. You are being lied to by the media, and these war-profiteers, are disgusting people. But what's worse than that is what's going on in our own country, the fact that tens of thousands of people a week are dying, and the media and the politicians are just ignoring it, and that this monster of dystopia, Mad Max world is growing day by day, and eventually, I say it's an election year, so they're like kind of like propping a lot of stuff up. But inflation is growing, crime is increasing. By the time the elections are over, it's going to be too late. It doesn't matter who wins in November. You understand? The law, there's no law is going to change dystopia in Mad Max world, right? By that point, the Great Reset will be several years into have, it basically will have, its claws and tentacles will have been in covering this entire former United States that it'd just be far too late. So you better get ready for dystopia is what I'm saying. But anyway, help a guy out. Cheers. I hope you have a great day. Hope I wasn't a downer. Take care.